Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Abraham Chicks. My name's Tina, I'm your host, and this is the show that brings you amazing women that are actually living the law of attraction and beyond. And my guest today, I'm honored, really honored to have Cassandra Bodzak on the show today. And Cassandra really is an expert in holistic living. She's authored a best-selling book, Eat with Intention, created courses, masterminds, memberships, meditations. The list goes on, and you'll be able to share some of that good stuff with us today. So thank you so much for coming today, Cassandra.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So before we get into all the really good stuff of what you're currently doing now, there's always a story behind your why. And so I'm curious as to what has put you on this journey in the first place to actually, make you so passionate and focused on sort of holistic lifestyle.
Yeah, I feel like I've had three different baby journeys, so to speak, that all had their own influence. But I actually feel like the first one started when I was very little. I had this coping mechanism as a child where before I went to bed, I would imagine my E! True Hollywood story. I don't know, back in the day, they had this thing, for those of you who don't know what that is, I don't even know if it still exists, but it was essentially these celebrities would do these, it was mini biography kind of things where they would go back and they'd be everybody teased me in high school and, and they would and my parents never believed in me or whatever. They would just kind of give you all the contrast of what had happened growing up. And I loved them. I lived for them when I was little because they just always inspired me. And I loved hearing how some of these people who you looked up to or admired had kind of unlikely beginnings. And my favorite ones were always the people that didn't come from a family that was connected to anyone, or maybe had people who didn't believe in them growing up, or people that told them they were crazy when they went for their dreams. And so what I would do whenever I felt like I wasn't supported, or no one and I wasn't really feeling like I had any encouragement, so to speak, to kind of do what I do. And I knew I came from a family that didn't have they're awesome. They are awesome, but they're not a connected family, so to speak.
And you recognize that from quite a young age that you felt that disconnect. Wow. Yeah.
And they didn't. They were. They provided for me very well, and my parents are really loving and they're really sweet. But if you wanted to be when you watch these kind of TV shows or whatever, you want to be an actress, or you wanted to be some big person in the world, a lot of the times you'd always notice that their parents were already big people in the world, right? Or their parents knew people, right? And I knew that my dad, they were both great people, but they were kind of normal parents, they were, it wasn't Mark Zuckerberg was my dad or something, And so before I went to bed, I would create my own E! True Hollywood story in my head almost every night. And I would think about how I couldn't wait until whatever I did in the world, whatever significant thing, and I didn't know what I was going to do yet at this stage of my life. I was when I get known for that thing that I'm meant to get known for, I can't wait to tell the story about how I had no connections. I had no easy ins. I had nobody offering me anything. I had to fight tooth and nail for it all. And how I was able to create this amazing thing from nothing. Because I want to be able to inspire other little girls out there that even if the people in their life aren't cheering them on, even if they're not getting picked for the school play, or they don't make the cheerleading squad, or the girls at school they want to be friends with don't like them, or whatever it is, that they can still create an amazing life, and that they don't have to give their, I wouldn't have said this in my younger age, but they don't have to give their power away to other people.
How old were you at this time, Cassandra, when you were thinking this?
It started pretty young, honestly. I would say it probably started as early as 4th or 5th grade.
What's that? I'm not familiar with the American ages.
Probably 8 or 9.
Wow.
And then went on and just got stronger throughout middle school and high school. And then like, you know, in college, I kind of, no, at college I had rough times too with that. But I think it's always been something that's really been I've really been passionate about, where I think I knew that the bigger part of my purpose, and I think sometimes, you know, and I believe sometimes our purpose is a lot more broader than we like to think our purpose is like make handmade bracelets that, you know, whatever, right? Something super specific and like, but I think often our purpose is broader than that. And the way that you channel that is kind of up to you and your creative inclinations. But I've kind of known from a really early age that my purpose was to make something of myself in the world in a big, good way. But more so that I could inspire women that also didn't have, you know, that, you know, weren't brought up with a silver spoon or whatnot, or didn't maybe have the self-confidence, or didn't have whatever it was, that had faced the adversity somehow, you know?
Do you feel that you were somehow almost manifesting from that young age, almost creating a contrasted story so you could have that E2 story? Yeah.
I actually, in a very ridiculous way, and I don't think I manifested this, but I do remember that at one point feeling like I didn't have a big enough tragedy, you know?
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes you'd watch these stories and
it's almost like you need the tragedy to be able to have like the inspiration. Right? Yes.
And like now it's funny now, and I definitely got my tragedy. But like I said, I don't think I manifested it, because I would not have in a million years wished that tragedy on myself or my family. But
we never do, and I think it's a bit harsh to think that, but we're in that vibration of wanting to, you have that knowing that you're going to be doing something.
I probably have. It's so interesting to talk about that too, because I probably have. On one hand, I think because I was doing that from such an early age, I had no idea even what I was doing. I think I definitely manifested a lot of the amazing things in my career from a very early age, because I knew that I was going to do something big.
Yeah.
And that was very much just like, and I, even when I was like figuring it out, then I also probably, you're right, I probably did manifest having, you know, I had a lot of, you know, people in my life along the way that really like didn't believe in me, that really like told me I was crazy, or told me that I'd never make anything of myself. And I definitely faced a lot of pushback, especially like in college.
Yeah.
I had a really rough time in college with my professors and people in my program. And I guess maybe on some level I attracted that, because it's funny, because the conversation I had right before this interview, we were talking about how about rejection on a professional level, and how sometimes we like it fuels us, right? And I've always
it can be a positive.
Yeah, like I've always had this thing, and I think it stems from my earlier life, before my pre-professional life, where, you know, when I was like acting in plays or whatever, and I didn't get the part I wanted or whatever, something like that, right? Then I'd be like, oh, okay, well, you know what? If I didn't get the part I wanted in your play or whatever, then I'll just, you know, I'm just going to book a bunch of short film roles, and I'm going to get a part in another play, and I'm going to do all this. And I would like, it would like rev me up, and I'd be like, in college, I went to college for acting, and I got a lot of pushback. A lot of people telling me I would never like do anything on TV or whatever. And
you chose the right profession to get the pushback. So that, right?
Right? I picked it. And it was so funny, because like all of that pushback made me, I mean, I did so many indie films and gone on TV shows and had an agent and a manager before I graduated college, mostly because I was proving myself to people that didn't believe in me, you know? And, you know, the funny thing is that I think that definitely is, you know, the plus side of rejection, can be, you know, on one hand, like not to take it personally, right? The four agreement, so to speak. And I think now in my older years, I I now see rejection as more of divine protection and guidance and direction and showing me where I'm not meant to be. And it's hard. I think sometimes the more attached you are to whatever the thing is, to really accept that. But I often, I had something happen to me recently where it was actually so nonsensical for me to get rejected from this thing that I was like, this has to be my guides protecting me. Yeah. Like there has to be something here that I don't know, because it's almost eerie how things played out. And I think that comes from kind of like, being farther along on your spiritual path and like kind of like settling into some of these teachings, is now when things like that happen, when something like randomly falls apart, or like, something that doesn't quite add up kind of like falls through the cracks or something like that, I may not always be able to know why exactly what that is, but I do have a lot of trust that I'm very, very protected and very cared for. So I'm like, okay, maybe I don't know why I'm not going to go on that trip anymore. Like this random thing happened that had to conflict with that thing I really wanted to do, but I can trust that for whatever reason, I'm meant to be wherever the place, like kind of, what we had chatted about right before this call, how your journey, how you felt like kind of you were pushed and guided. And I feel like sometimes that's what happens with rejection too. And you have to kind of, on one hand, trust that. And on the other hand, I will say that I don't, it doesn't fuel me as much as it used to, but I do think it's a productive way to handle rejection, in the way of how I think growing up and even till like, my early 20s, it would more so be like, all right, well, you don't want me. I'm just going to like head down, do work, and you're going to know me because of the work I do. Right. And that's definitely been my MO at times, which has worked in a way. But now I try to work from a place of just like being inspired and being excited for what I do, and not necessarily feeling like I have to like stick it to someone,
Well, that's part of your growth. But in the early days, when you need that drive, you're either kind of pushed by pain or pulled by desire. So it's like the pain was pushing you at that point, and now the desire.
Other things. The second thing that really inspired my book, Eat with Intention, and the start of my spiritual journey was that that whole time I also suffered from disordered eating. And so when I was 21, I finally got really sick, and it was mostly, it ended up being food allergies. But I think it was my body's kind of reaction to me not treating it well for years, and me not speaking kindly to it, and me, pretty much hating it. And that really, I got so scared because I would just have these like terrible pains, all these stomach pains. I could barely walk. Sometimes they were so bad. And we did like every blood test in the gamut, and they couldn't figure out what was going on with me. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I think the last one they did was like, it got pretty extreme. Like they were testing for some really serious things, and I was very scared. And luckily one of the nurses like saw me crying one of the days I was like walking out of the infirmary, because they had still not found anything. And she was like, you might want to just like go to the library. This is like back when you'd go to the library and
showing our age.
Go to the library, take out a book, and look up food allergies and like common food allergies. And she was like, it's worth a shot. We've tried all the other things. And I really believe that nurse was like an angel. And and sure enough, I did it. And I had that at the time. I wouldn't have been able to describe it this way, but now looking back, I can definitely tell I kind of got that divine inspiration. And I was like, this is it. Like, I got to do this. And I eliminated all the top allergens, ended up going vegan as well and gluten-free. And I really just I like immersed myself in like all these readings about like different things that could bother different people, and like essentially put myself on a really strict kind of elimination diet. And what that is, like, you eliminate everything for 3 weeks, and then you slowly add things back in one at a time so you can see what affects your body. So, but the interesting thing was, even though this diet was pretty extreme, the energy I was doing it with was like a complete 180 from like how I had done anything else before in my life. And so even though, you know, if you had looked at like what I was eating, you might be like, oh my God, are you still in like your disordered eating? But the intention that I was doing it with was for the first time in my life, just out of like very deep love for my body, and like
You wanted to get well rather than before feeling bad about yourself and so restricting food.
Yeah. And I didn't care. I wasn't like, I literally stopped caring what size my body was and just wanted to make sure it got healthy.
Yeah.
And that became my priority. I started talking to my body. I started apologizing to it for all the things I did. After literally like 3 days on the diet, all of my pain went away. My energy skyrocketed. I started feeling like a completely new human. And that continued. And then when I started adding things back in, I found out that I have a lot of adverse reactions. But now that's kind of inspired my blog, was just me learning how to cook with this new palette of things, and also kind of explaining this like body love journey of mine, which is essentially what Eat with Intention, my first book, is that first chapter of my life, and the experience of how to rekindle that love for your body and how to talk to it.
Where did you get the idea to talk to your body? Was that something that somebody guided you on, or you just intuitively knew that you had to start?
Yeah, it just happened.
Speaking nicer. Yeah.
It just happened. I remember one night I was, while I was still in the pain, crying, laying in bed, because I would have to like lay out in bed, like, I don't know if you ever had cramps. I just described it as like the worst cramps you've ever had times like 100,000.
Yeah.
And so it's like sometimes you just like lay in bed and try to find like that position where you're like not in pain. So I remember laying in bed and I couldn't find a position where I was not in pain. I was just like crying hysterically in my bedroom. And I just put my hands on, it just like came like naturally. And I just put my hands on myself, and was like, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. And I just started talking. And I'm like, I know you're probably doing this because I've been horrible to you. And like all of these things. And it was so interesting because once I got done with my little monologue, I felt my body receive it.
Yeah.
You know, I felt it hear me on some level, and it really brought me relief. And it kind of just like initiated something in me.
Yeah.
And I've always been like, I guess as a person, I've always been a little quirky and marched to the beat of my own drum in so many aspects. So I didn't even like second guess the fact about talking to my body. It just then became like a thing I did.
But it makes sense, doesn't it? And I imagine that there'll be so many women around the world just acknowledging, we talk badly to ourselves all the time. Oh, I don't look nice in this. Oh, I look fat in this. Or, you know, I'm not good enough. Or we talk to us. You wouldn't talk to anybody else the way you talk to yourself. So it makes sense that by switching that round would have a huge impact.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was epic. Our bodies are always speaking to us. You know, it's kind of like, I feel like everybody in the world has had a mother that has had like, this is just not sitting right with me. You know, like I got a bad gut feeling about this. Right. And like, you know, and I think there, you know, even, you know, if you have like my mom like reads all the books and like reads Oprah and stuff like that. But like comparatively to me, she, you know, she's not that spiritual. She's like very like, I'd say on like the normal side of things, where like I'm pretty off the deep end. But still, you know, she's very connected to her intuition. Even if she doesn't relate to it, you know, I might say, oh, I feel like I got a message from my guides or whatever, right? My mom would just be like, I don't know why, but you can't do that. Like, I just know you can't do that. And I'll be like, okay.
The difference now is you can laugh. I'm like this with my family too. They just laugh about it now. And I'm like, oh, and I got a sign and I got a message that I have to do this.
Yeah. Well, my parents and my grandma, they all Catholic, and they went to like Catholic school and whatnot. So they actually, it's really like, they actually find it very fascinating, the overlaps. And they're really great at finding the connectors, right? And being like, oh, well, like maybe I relate to it like an Abraham Hicks thing I heard. And my dad will be able to say like, oh, it's like this story in the Bible, you know? And, you know, I'll talk about like angels or guides and stuff like that. And like, you know, I was astounded actually, because they went to Catholic school growing up, the knowledge they have of all different angels, you know, which was something that I guess because of where I was when I was a kid, I never liked to have as much into. And when I was there. But yeah, anyway, so that's so cool. So that was like the first part. And then my tragedy, so to speak, was when I was 25 and my little brother got diagnosed with a terminal illness. And that was really the moment, looking back. I mean, obviously, I feel like all these moments shaped me, but I feel like that was the catalyst. That was the moment that really, like, I stopped acting. And all of a sudden it was like very clear to me that there was no energy for me there. That not that there's nothing, not that that's not a beautiful profession, but for me specifically, I was not feeling like I was of my highest service there. And I started leaning more into my blog, which I had at that point already for like 5 years. And it would just been like a passion project for me, something that I love sharing, something that, like, you know, if I met someone that related to me, I'd be like, oh, you should check out my blog or whatever. But, you know, I didn't expect more than like 30 people would ever be reading it, you know? And it was just something that I enjoyed doing. It was a hobby. And then when Kenny got diagnosed, I remember really, it just completely changed my perspective on life. I got, you know, I don't know if I'd call it depression, because I feel like, I don't know, like the schematics of like definitions, but I feel like when like a really sad life event happens, then it's not necessarily depression, it's sadness.
It's sadness. You're going to feel the emotion. Exactly.
You know, because it's, you know, there's reason for it. And so I went to a time of deep, deep sadness. And that's when I found my spiritual practice. That's when I started meditating. I would go to I went to a Buddhist monastery in Brooklyn. I was in New York at the time, and like tried to learn how to meditate with that. I tried Kundalini yoga. I found A Course in Miracles. That's when I found like Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay and Abraham Hicks and this, you know, all these different people in this world that it was almost like I had been reacquainted with. Yeah. Like it felt like I was remembering things that I had known a part of my life. And my brother is still with us. Thank
That's
God.
Great to hear.
So that's really exciting. But I definitely would be not doing it justice if I didn't say like the 3 years that followed that were the scariest years of my life. Spent in and out of a lot of hospitals. And for as hippy dippy as I am, and how I definitely lean on the side of Eastern medicine and naturopathic medicine, I have to give it up to Western medicine for him being here. So that is actually the turning point that made me dive deep into spirituality, because I really needed it. I was at that point of deep, deep, deep surrender in my life where I really knew I was in over my head. And I did not know how to handle this on my own. And I really kind of got reacquainted with God at that point. And I, you know, started talking to God. And it's, yeah, so that shifted everything. And I focused more energy on the blog, and I put more energy into my work, because it was a safety net for me. It saved my life.
The work that you do, was that related in any way to helping your brother? Did you think what you were doing would also help him with his illness, or was it just something for you to focus on?
No, honestly, that was the hardest part. And so at the time I was my blog and my focus was more like holistic. I went to nutrition school. My brother actually paid for me to go to nutrition school, which was really sweet. And because I had told him about how much I wanted it, and so I got certified as like a holistic health coach, and because I wanted to help people, and that all happened like right before I got diagnosed. And so when that happened, you know, for anyone who has dealt with a family member who has been through their own kind of illness or whatnot, it's, I think, one of the hardest things to be in the holistic health space. And I wasn't even so deeply into the spiritual space at that moment in my life as I am now. But you really can't force your beliefs on people. And you really
and you can't fix it either. That's the other thing. You kind of want to fix it, but you can't.
Yeah. You can't. And I think that was like definitely a second layer of pain during that for me. But luckily, I actually found a lot of forums. There's a lot of people that have that experience where you're into holistic health and you're reading up, and here I am, like, right now I would call it, like, I read like medical medium and all of that kind of stuff, and I really align with that. It was like the Gerson program and a lot of this healing with natural remedies, and I've always been like that. But when it's your family member and it's their journey and it's their diagnosis and it's their body, you have to respect their choices around it. And at different times during his journey, he was open to trying a few different things, like juicing, and he read up on some other different naturopathic things. And eventually, towards the end, when he reached a point where it got really bad, he finally did end up calling this functional medicine doctor that I had researched and found that would handle this thing. And I had been begging him to do it for literally probably over a year since he got the diagnosis. And like, by the time he went to see him, the functional medicine doctor actually was like, you need surgery, and you need Western medicine right now. Unfortunately, like, it's too acute for me to be able to work fast enough. And I really respected that, honestly. I was frustrated, obviously, but I respected that, and my brother, actually, I think that made my brother grow a tremendous respect for that kind of more naturopath functional medicine community, because I think he really respected the fact that the guy wasn't going to, give him some herbs and stuff and like try to pretend to heal it when he saw the gravity of his situation and realized he was not able to.
And when you have options, it's like, use everything, throw everything at it, combine it, use everything.
Yeah. So, so that was a hard thing. So I really channeled it more into being like, how can I feel like I'm contributing to the world? And how can I feel like I'm helping people? And honestly, it was definitely my, I would equate it to being like my Prozac, so to speak, to keep me afloat and to keep me kind of in a good space. So the thing you can do for the people in your life who are not ready is just be an example of an alternative.
Just be happy. I think when you're having a happy life and feeling good, people are like, what's she doing? What's she on? They're curious. Yeah.
And, later on during his journey, like, he knew I meditated and he knew all the things I was doing. And, he was at one point in so much pain that he could barely sleep at night. And I would call him and he would let me guide him in a meditation so that he fell asleep. And so he would, like, quote unquote, meditate to fall asleep every night. And then there was even one time we were in the hospital after his surgery, and he was doing like a lap. Like, you have to do a lap around like the nurse's station sometimes when you get like massive surgery to just kind of keep things moving. And his vitals went crazy, and his heart rate went up to like cardiac arrest, and all of his like vitals were a mess. And so the nurses came running over and they're like, we have to bring him back. We have to sit down. Like, his vitals are crazy. We're scared he could be having like a minor heart attack or something like that. So they bring him back, and I'm like, Kenny, sit down, close your eyes. We're going to meditate. And and we meditated for maybe like 5 minutes. It was like 5 minutes, and me just pretty much just telling him to breathe and like let the thoughts go, and just like, basic stuff. And the nurses came back in and they're like, what is going on in here? And I was like, oh, we're just meditating. And they're like, all right, well, his heart rate like balanced out and all of his vitals are beautiful. And then Kenny was like, oh shit. It was like, your gypsy magic works.
I love it.
So yeah, so it's like, I think we just have to be who we are and be a stand for what we believe in, and trust that, the people in our lives and our family and stuff like that, they'll come and they'll ask when they're ready. And if you're standing in that and you're really an example of the benefit that it can give, then they'll come to you perhaps even quicker.
Totally. And do you feel that you've got your E2 story now? Do you feel like you're living it now?
I do. I'm like, I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm done. No
No
more
more.
drama. No more drama. We're good. I feel like I have enough already for a new True Hollywood story, and now like it can just be like the good stuff.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's so amazing. And so, if you would mind just to share some of the things in your book, eating with intention, maybe a couple of the nuggets that would really help other people, because emotional eating, it's got such a scale. I think we're all guilty of emotionally eating in some way, shape, or form, not necessarily in an extreme disorder, but certainly, if you're tired or you're bored or you're upset, you reach for something of comfort. So what would you advise on that?
So a good way to recognize your emotional eating patterns is to commit at least for 2 weeks. You could do it for a week. You'll notice it in a week. You'll notice it pretty much immediately. But I like to do 2-week spectrum because I feel like it gives you like a little bit more of like a time to explore different things and different things to happen in your life, which is helpful. And so if you just commit to eating 3 meals a day, if you're a 3 meal a day person, if you're, whatever your natural thing is, the point is to pick, if you do 2 meals a day, that's fine too. But like 3, 2, or even 4, if you're like, I know everybody has their own little like things, but the point is you have a set amount of meals that you eat a day, no snacks. And like for me, the 3 meals a day really, really helped. So
does it matter what you eat? Because there's so many different diets. Yeah.
No. So it doesn't matter what you eat, because it's not really that what matters is that you design your meals, every meal, just so that you know that it will fill you up. Yeah. Like it'll satiate your hunger. So like the point with this is not for you to be hungry at all. It's not a diet. It's just an exploration of your emotional tendencies with food. So like if if I have oatmeal for breakfast and I have like a salad for lunch and then I have, some casserole or whatever for dinner, then that's enough to sustain me. I'm getting enough food. I'll be good. I won't be like actually physically hungry, because that's important. Because if you're physically hungry, it can sabotage it.
And this is what happens when you do these crazy diets. You're just constantly hungry, constantly thinking about food. And then, that creates the resistance as well, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And then it feeds into your patterns. Whereas like if you just pick the 3 meals a day, pick 3 normal meals, and then what you'll notice, and just do that for 2 weeks. It's all you have to do. Like bonus points, if you're someone that does struggle or tend to think about food too much, one of the things I found incredibly helpful is just to plan your 3 meals the night before. So it doesn't have to be a big ordeal. You don't have to meal prep if you're not a meal prepper or anything like that. Again, like this is not necessarily. The magic happens is that during these 2 weeks, whenever you're in between meals and you feel like you want to have a snack or you want to go get food, like you journal about what you actually want. Because now you know that it's actually not food.
It's not hunger. Yeah.
It's not hunger. It's not food. You've eaten plenty enough. So what you find during that, and it sounds, the interesting thing about this, because I remember when I first did it, I was like, this is crazy. This is not actually going to do anything. Like, I'm not even going to notice. Wait, just try it. Just even try it for a week, and you'll be astounded at the amount of stuff that comes up when you're not allowed to in between meal snack. Like, I planned I was going to eat that same, salad that I always get at the deli today. And, now I'm feeling like I want pizza. Why do I want that? And, you can just journal a little bit on it. And you'll probably be like, you know what? I've had a really frustrating morning. And I just want to kind of like relief or relax or whatever. Or maybe you're going to get your cupcake. Right? You're like, I just want an after work cupcake. Why do you want that cupcake? Well, I'm just exhausted and I feel depleted, and it's really asking yourself that. And you do it for, like I said, 2 weeks I would love, but a week I'll take. And you'll start seeing how, maybe what your individual patterns are and where that emotional eating comes in. Because the truth is, so many of us, almost all of us emotionally eat. But when you can see it and when you can be conscious of it, then you can handle the real problem, right? Yeah. So instead of, like, for me, if I have like a really busy morning and I'm feeling depleted, it's so easy to be like, oh, I'm going to go get a cookie and a latte, right? But if I ask myself, what's actually going on here? I don't actually want a cookie and a latte. I ate a good breakfast. I'm having lunch in a bit. Like, oh, you know, what I actually want is a bit of sweetness and a bit of relief and a bit of energy, right? And so then instead, and this is something I actually do all the time because this is one of my things, I'll go and I'll take a walk outside, like in the sunshine. And now we live in California, so it's always beautiful here. Yeah. And I'll go take a 10-minute walk outside, and I'll put on some fun music, and I'll just like give myself, like, that actually fills what my soul is actually craving more than a latte. And work with is the at night chocolate or the at night like little sugar thing. And when you actually ask yourself, you're like, oh, you know what? I'm wanting sweetness. I think now in our culture, most females more than ever are craving sweetness because we have to be a lot of times very masculine during the day. Mm. And so at night, we're like really craving that relaxation, and we're craving, you know, melting into our feminine. And so oftentimes when the way we see that kind of in the pop culture and the media is a glass of red wine and chocolate.
Yeah, that's probably where I fit into. Yeah, it's right? You say it's like your treat at the end of the day, but you're right. If you question why you're doing it.
Yeah. And so what I found to be great instead of that is to, one, buy yourself a nice silky nightgown that's like makes you feel sexy and is soft and comfortable, and take a nice bath, take a bubble bath or an Epsom salt bath. If you can't take a bath, then even just a shower with some nice, like, put essential oils in there so it smells beautiful. Do some restorative yoga, or, you know, just some light stretching. Make yourself a cup of tea and like cuddle up on the couch and journal. Like, just do something that actually gives you that kind of like hug that you're really looking for, that, you know, the wine can somewhat is kind of taking the place of, and the chocolate is taking the place.
And because the problem can be that you can have the chocolate or the wine and then afterwards feel the guilt. And so then it hasn't done the job that you wanted it to do in the first place.
Yeah. And the thing is, food can never really do the job. You know, like, you got to ask yourself.
What if you have no resistance though? Because I know some people that they just, you know, they just love food, all food. They don't see anything as good or bad, and they just eat what they want. I mean, that kind of lines up with universal laws, right? How do you relate to that?
I think as far as like them being healthy.
Yeah, just like being able to, you know, if you listen to Abraham, they'll say, if you don't think it's bad, it's not bad. It's all about your perception, totally. your view about it. So,
and that's what, like, you know, in the book, it talks a lot about that. It talks about how you can eat kale from a place of self-hate, and you can eat French fries from a place of self-love. Yeah. And the diet industry and a lot of the food stuff like that, it kind of likes to take our power away and say, hey, like, we know how to eat better than you guys do, so let's help you out. But like this exercise, you've actually made the connection. When you've actually like been like, oh wow, like this happened when this and this, right? It's something that kind of just like magical that happens, that's so much easier for you then to say, you know what, I'm gonna totally stick to pizza when I'm out with my girlfriends and we go out like once a month to that, like our special spot in the West Village or whatever. But I'm gonna skip it when I'm stressed out. Right? Yeah. And you make those choices from a place of love and from a place of your own self-knowledge, and it kind of feeds that whole alignment.
Yeah, awareness is amazing. And I guess you would see a lot of times when it's just habit as well, you know, or certain people, you know, I know with my mum, she likes sweet things, she likes cakes, and I noticed that I join her, whereas it's not something I would normally go and buy. So you would recognize your habit stuff as well.
Totally.
And one thing I've been doing recently, which I've actually been asking my body, what do you want?
Yeah.
And surprising when it's telling me that I want some fruit, and I'm like, oh, I don't normally have fruit. Oh, okay. But just going with it and because it's consciousness, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
gonna answer you.
Oh, it knows. Yeah, there's a meditation in it. And I actually have a meditation on YouTube
Mm.
that guides you through that process of kind of like getting into a really beautiful state of gratitude for your body, and then asking it how you've been treating it, what if it needs, if there's anything you're doing right now that's not working for it, and
Yeah.
kind of facilitates that conversation because it's so important. And it's
Yeah.
always ready to talk to us.
Perfect. Well, so what else is happening? I know you're working on a program called Practical Magic. Tell us what's that
Yeah.
all about? Because I just love anything that's got magic in it.
Practical Magic.
Yeah.
We're just about to open for the second round of enrollment for it. I just finished my first group of Practical Magic training, and it really is. I think it's like me pretty much opening my full book, so to speak. This is like Eat with Intention was kind of like the first stage of my journey,
Mm-hmm.
and this is kind of like Practical Magic is what's got me to where I am right now. And it's just literally I'm so excited. I'm writing a book on it right now too, and it really is like it's my guidebook. It's this Practical Magic, the way that kind of came about, and the book's not going to be called Practical Magic, but the energy of it is balancing the magical and the spiritual and the energetic with aligned, grounded action.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I have found has been the secret sauce for my expansion and for my growth and for really being able to create a life I love. Practical Magic. So I really like downloaded one night, just like this epic training. It's a 6-month training where every single week they get a new lesson, and it's divided into 3 different parts. So the first part is that body wisdom part. It is kind of essentially a lot of the gems from Eat with Intention that I do think are important for us to have and us to crystallize, because it helps us tap us into our bodies and our deeper intuition through that. And then the middle of it is called Mind Magic, which I would align, I think, a lot more with the Abraham Hicks stuff, where we really do talk about how important the words you use are, how you receive words from others is, your thoughts that you think during the day, how do you think yourself out of a hole, and just really practical strategies to get really practical and energetic. So it's like the practical side of it, it's like, all right, let's do a thought log. Right? Let's write down all the thoughts you're thinking, 3 times a day. So just like your food, we can actually see what's coming up, because chances are, like, just like food goes on autopilot, thoughts go on autopilot. And you're like, I don't know why I'm exhausted all the time. I get 8 hours of sleep, but 70% of your thoughts are I'm exhausted. Last is what I like to call like soul nourishment. And that really is, your connection to your higher power, meditation, prayer, the different ways you use rituals in your life, and other culminating lessons and life tactics. And I really think of it as kind of like my Wonder Woman training. Like if any of you guys have seen the preview of Wonder Woman, there's this part where when she sees her getting trained, and her mom says, if you're going to train her, you got to train her like 10 times harder than any other warrior, 100 times harder than any warrior, 1,000 times harder. And I remember seeing that and just like having everything really activate within me, and understanding that oftentimes when we are really called to go big in the world, when we are really called to have a big mission, our training is intense. Yeah. And we really do need to have those tools in our belt to be able to withstand. And I feel like I've been really lucky along my journey to gather a really powerful toolbox, and it has really helped me expand and grow and deal with the things that happen throughout life and throughout business as well, and all the different things we navigate. And so when I was in a meditation, and I got this beautiful download for the program just about how this is kind of my Amazon warrior training for women that feel really called to be forces of light in the world. And this is a gift that I can give them through really actually distilling and taking them through all of these components that I have found to be, invaluable in my journey. Oh, wow. I realized, like I got myself into that high flying space, and then this opened up, and then this opened up, and then, oh my God, right? And we need those very real experiences
Absolutely.
to really like crystallize it in ourselves. So with practical magic, I really, you know, one of like the first things we did before we even like dive in is just doing energetic clearings of our pretty much our whole world, so that we can make the space for all of the things that are now going to coming in from this training and this program. And in that first, like, I love that first exercise alone, because within the first week of us working together, like the women were freaking out. They were like, you never believed, I finally like cleared out my whole inbox and I got like 3 job offers, like for like, you know, consulting projects that I hadn't, you know, I'd been like hoping for it and like hadn't heard anything back from weeks. Or you'll never believe that I even had one of the ladies in the last round. It was so cute. She got her little boys to do it too. And like one of her little boys was like doing it for his like toy box or whatever. And then he found a $5 bill later that day. And she was like, see, that's what happens when you clear the space.
Clear out your clutter. Yeah. It's so true.
But so a lot of the, every single week for 6 months, every single assignment that they get, they have a very like practical, grounded assignment to integrate it into their life, so that at the end of the 6 months, these women are just different, right? The way they operate in the world is more magical.
Yeah.
Because not only are they well versed in the concepts, but it is now like an integral part of their life and how they move about and how they're
using it. Exactly.
And they're using it. Yeah. So that's where you actually see the epic transformation.
Sounds awesome. But what do you do? I mean, you have all this experience, you've had these years of kind of growth and creation and all the rest of it. What do you do when you're having like a really shit day? You know, because it still happens, right?
Totally. I do literally all the same stuff that I tell my people to do. It's really funny though, because that's why I like, as we were going through some of the things, I'm always like, hey guys, like I still do this.
Yeah.
The thoughts that are going on. What is the perpetrator here?
Yeah.
You know? And then when I find the perpetrator, and I feel like that's one of the most common ones I find. That's like something that usually nips in the bud. There's usually some like negative Nancy thought that's like being incestuous, like insidious is probably not incestuous, but in my head. And then when I can pinpoint what that is, then I like to do a 2-part practical magical solution to it, where I'm like, okay, I'm feeling funky right now because I'm feeling overwhelmed, right? I'd say that's probably like more of a typical one for me. And I know overwhelm is really abundance with like a nasty mask on. And
I like that. Right? Yeah, that's a nice shift. Yeah.
So one that comes in because I realize that, right? And I'll be like, okay, I realize it's abundance, but still we're human, right? So sometimes you have like a long to-do list and you're like, I get it, it's abundance, but like right now my body like just wants to cry. And then I'll again hit it with the practical and be like, okay, what is the practical solution to that? Because let's say the more magical solution to that would be like really sitting in, like you could do an Abraham Hicks thing where you're like, oh my God, how exciting is it that I get to do this thing and then I get to do this thing. And can you imagine? I don't even know what it's like to be bored. I haven't felt boredom it's probably since I was a little girl, right? And kind of just crawling yourself out of the hole by actually, you know, I do it out loud, but you could do it in your head, you know, by talking yourself up the ladder, so to speak, and finding the actual abundance and finding the things that feel true to you, which I think is the most important thing. Because if you're deep in the overwhelm and deep in feeling like a little bit more victim mode, let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
You can't just say like, oh, I'm so abundant, right? Because you could say that and you'd probably say like F you to yourself, right?
You just keep attracting more not abundance because you're in the other vibration. Yeah.
Right? So it's like finding the thing that does feel true for you, you know, looking at what's the one thing on your list that you are really, really excited about, right? What is you know, even just having a moment, some of the things I'll do is to be like, how crazy it is that I have these much people that want this much stuff from me. How nuts. right? How blessed is that, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of find the little notches that you can climb yourself up, and you can do that not just for overwhelm, but for any kind of thing that you're like, you know, you just kind of gently climb yourself up the ladder based on things that actually feel good for you. And then the more practical side, I think, is good to combine with that, is to find actually a real tactic to handle it. So if it's overwhelm, then one of the things I do is I like write out my big to-do list. I look next to my calendar, and I'm like an in-person paper thing. Mm-hmm. So like I have like a big old calendar with like little Post-its and stuff on it, in addition to my Google Calendar, in addition to my date book and all things. But like I will get out my big calendar. I did this literally last night because I have so many things going on right now. And I wrote out a list of all the things I have gone down. I wrote them out on cute little pink Post-its because it makes me happy when things are cute. And then I was like, okay, and then this is what I have to get done here, and then this is what I have to get done there. And it was a very practical solution that was able to eliminate the overwhelm, because now it's like out.
It's clear in your mind. Yeah.
You know, the exhausted thing, that was one of the things that came up for me too. And I really did notice that it was a repetitive thought pattern. And so the practical side of it was I gave myself 8 hours to sleep every night. I made sure that no matter what, I got 8 hours to sleep, so that when that thought came up, I could, from a very logical, legitimate, truthful place, be like, that's bullshit, right? And then I can, you know, also replace it and find a replacement thought and say, I have, you know, my replacement thought for that is I have enough energy to handle everything today is throwing at me. You know, I have enough energy to take on the day. Like, I feel good. I'm fine, you know? And again, it's like you pick whatever resonates with you. I think the most important part is that, one, you combine something like practical and logical and an aligned action that makes sense to you to proactively do something about whatever it is. And even if it's just like waking up and feeling sadness, or, you know, you're going through a breakup or something like that, right? Your practical thing could be calling a girlfriend. Your practical thing could be journaling about it, right?
Or even going to bed and sleeping. I think sometimes just give yourself permission to just, okay, I'm just going to have that day off. Yeah.
Yep. Totally. Yeah.
Love it. So you've done amazing things, and you know, I'm curious as to what the next 5 years. Do you have like an even bigger E2 story, like the follow-up? What would the sequel to the E2 story be, so that in the next 5 years, you know, do you have like a really big, scary vision that's just like...
You know, it's really interesting. I've been thinking about this recently because I definitely have a vision, but it doesn't scare me.
Wow.
And I don't know how I feel about that. Like,
but I think that's how it should be. You should just feel inspired, because when it's fearful...
Well, but I get it. You know, I'm all for it. Sometimes when you're reaching higher, there's like, you're reaching out of your comfort zone. So if you're feeling a little nervous about it, like that, I feel like it's, you know, makes sense. My vision is to have a holistic lifestyle TV show. Mm-hmm. And so having that on a major network, and really being able to bring, you know, Eat with Intention to life and some of this practical magic to life in a way that's women all over the world are able
big
to
scale,
see it.
Much bigger scale.
Yeah, in a big scale, like magical Martha Stewart vision is kind of where I'm going with that, right? I also want to get more involved. I'm involved with a couple charities right now, but I see myself doing some sort of give back line and creating a product where I can like directly help give back to these charities in a way through my work, as well as, you know, investigating how to incorporate more of that into what I already do, and figuring out how to collab with that. That's something that I have worked with charities in the capacity of kind of like coming on board with a host and like, you know, sharing and stuff like that. But I'm trying to hold the space for figuring out if there's something that could be even more collaborative, and books, honestly. I love writing books. I am really excited for this next book because, you know, I'm so excited about this practical magic training. I feel so grateful to be doing it now. and to be watching what, you know, women transform before me. So I'm really, really excited to be, books have been like a really, really big thing for me, because when I was going through all of my spiritual growth, like every part of that journey, I didn't have money. I didn't have a lot of money at all, for a lot of things. And I learned so much from books. And because I really wanted it and I really cared for it, I would do all the exercises in the book. I would really like do the book, you know, I would be committed to it, because I'd be like, you know, maybe when I was 23, I couldn't afford to, you know, pay $5,000 for a Tony Robbins event or something like that, right? But I could read his book and like actually do every single exercise he recommended. And I credit a lot of my personal growth to doing things like that. So it's so important to me to be writing books forever, and to constantly be translating my work that I get to do one-on-one with, like, you know, a exclusive group of women that are willing to do it, that I be able to translate that into a way that, you know, that girl that's really struggling, that's like me when I was 23 or me when I was 25 and like needs this, but doesn't, you know, isn't at that place yet, to crack her open. So I think in the next 5 years, well, this next book will definitely be out, and hopefully there'll be like another 2 books on the shelf for me, by that time. And I think those are my big things. I want to, you know, travel around and keep spreading this message, but,
it's amazing. And it's really symbolic that you started with a blog that was something for fun, you know, or something that you were passionate about. And, you know, you hear this all the time. If you do something that you love, if you do something that inspires you, it doesn't matter what it is, you can create a business, a lifestyle. I mean, you're now with, you know, a huge business. It's just kind of, it's almost like it's just evolved. You didn't plan initially from the beginning to have, you know, this multi-scaled business. It was just a case of, I'm just going to write a blog, but it organically just erupted.
Yeah. Definitely the taste, and I was given this like beautiful TV show and this platform. It was like, oh great. Even more, I really saw that as God, you know, giving me a call to action and saying, hey, here, I'm going to put you here, but get to work, little girl. Yeah. Right?
Little girl.
Like, get to work. And I was like, okay.
And that feels like the perfect moment to say thank you so much for being here. I mean, you've just shared so many nuggets of wisdom, which I know are going to inspire many, many more. And I can't wait to see what else is happening in the next book, and just to keep following what you're doing, because it's just amazing.
Yay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
Thank you.